There were a lot of great questions from the audience, as well as, prior to this, we gathered a bunch of questions, Denny, from folks on Twitter. And first of all, I'd like to apologize for not wearing my overalls. They're in the wash. Otherwise, I would have joined the club today. But
I haven't owned a pair of overalls for 50 years.
Me either, and I'm only 51, so there you go. There's been a lot of well-deserved love in all these questions and all the chats that I've been in about the solo for your Gold Teeth 2. And one of the questions that has come up, many times, and I just want to ask one question, because one person actually sort of encapsulated the whole thing beautifully, and this is the way I think it should be asked. And Michael Selvage, who goes by Selviano on Twitter, said, "Please ask Denny if the rumors are true that he ascended to a higher plane after conceiving the solo for Your Gold Teeth 2. And if so, does he still live in that plane of existence?"
Well, that's a question I can't think of an answer for.
I'm trying to get to that plane of existence like every day. I do a 30-minute meditation every day, and now I have my gong. I'm working on getting there, Denny. It looks like a beautiful place to be.
And I think maybe the follow-up question, and this ties into something that DP, who's with us today on the stream, asked earlier, is, when you're playing solos on a track like Asia or Your Gold Teeth 2, are you thinking scales in your head, or are you just playing over the changes? Are you sort of playing what you feel? And I guess the sort of follow-on to that is, are you self-taught, or, did you have a teacher growing up?
Well, I had several teachers, actually. The one I remember the most was Billy Bauer. He was a resident guitar player with the Tonight Show band at the time, in the early 60s and such. He was an excellent guitar player. He had a D'Angelico. He showed it to me. There's not very many of them anymore. But, he really gave me an appreciation for music. I would complain to him about the quality of popular music and the way it's mostly trash. And he was a philosopher. He said, these things have been going on for thousands of years, and someday some guy will come along and make it better. And then it'll get lousy again. And then it'll get better again. So it, not to worry. But to answer your question, I do try to keep the scales and chords in mind. But mostly for those songs, you have to prepare in advance, because they're not your normal songs. It's not like you can walk in cold and never heard the thing, and then you're going to play a solo like that. You work with it for a week, and you get real familiar with the changes, so that when you're playing, you can think of the melodic content of what you're doing, and keeping the scales and arpeggios in the back of your mind.
Okay. Yeah. So Camps Jams, who is also with us, I believe, today on the stream, asked in advance, "Please ask Denny if he has ever once bent a guitar string in any solo."
Probably, but I don't think there's one on record. There was one note and one song on record where I did bend a string, and that was on specific request from Donald Fagen, and that is the prelude to the guitar solo on Green Earrings. It's the last note before the guitar solo, and the string is bent.
Yeah, I love that solo, by the way. It's one of my favorite Steely Dan songs, too.
One of the shortest sessions that I've played, by the way.
Really?
Yeah, 15 minutes it was done.
Wow, it wasn't a 200 take marathon like the rest of them.
Nope, maybe 3, 4 takes. That was it.
Wow, cool. Let's see. Next, we have Skinny Post Malone, who goes by the P Stall on Twitter. Wants to know: was there a moment where you thought to yourself, or just knew, we are really uniquely good as a band?
Uh, I knew the material was something special. You know, we struggled to perform it. You know, it was really like on the edge of our abilities, which is why they wanted to go with studio musicians later on, because we just really didn't have the expertise to pull it off.
Yeah, and that goes back to what you said earlier about how Donald and Walter were always thinking in service of the music, which I think is just a great way to sort of sum that up, right? And it makes sense. Okay, Jeffrey Morgan, who goes by JK Morg on Twitter, wants to know: can you rank or just tell us your favorite or most proud guitar moments with Steely Dan? What stands out to you as a player?
Uh, well, there's a few of them, but I think Your Gold Teeth 2 was the strangest series of chords and key changes that I ever had to play on. Um, and actually, I got a compliment from Victor Feldman when he heard it. He was in the studio and he says, "That's really quite nice playing over all those changes." And that was a real proud moment. I mean, Victor Feldman is a really accomplished musician. He's played with Miles Davis and he has his own records as well.
Yeah, Victor's amazing. It's just it's got to be such a compliment at such a young age that you were, I guess, right? When he told you that.
Yeah, I mean, we had him playing percussion and piano and vibes.
Right. Let's see. What else do we have? So Simpsy asked before about mustard on a tape. I just wanted to know if maybe I filled in a few more of the details that would jog your memory a little bit. Apparently, it was during the recording of the Boston Rag, and I think you were trying to punch in part of a solo or part of a guitar track. And I guess the story goes, and this is from the liner notes of the reissue of Countdown, I think, by the way, that same piece of tape just wouldn't stick. Like whatever you were recording, I guess, whenever Roger would rewind it, it just wouldn't be there, whatever you were recording. So I guess they finally gave up, changed tapes, did something to sort of, get the track the way they wanted to finish it. And then apparently the tape was sent to somebody, whether it was 3M or whatever manufacturer it was, and they did an analysis on it and found that there was mustard on the tape, and they're not sure how it got there. Does that ring a bell at all?
No, I've never heard this story before.
Look at us bringing you fun facts. I mean, there's so much Steely Dan lore, Denny. There really is.
Yeah.
I couldn't even tell you who it was that liked mustard.
That's great. All right, let's see. What else do we have? So one of the other things that surfaced again recently, thanks to Simpsy, is the Schlitz jingle that you guys did. So everybody wants to know if you've had a chance to revisit it. Have you listened to it again since it sort of came back out? And do you have any memories of that whole thing?
Well, I heard it. I remember holding the helium tank and feeding helium to Jeff Baxter.
That's what was in that tank. You were feeding. Okay, so you were holding the gong for my dad to ram his head into, and you were also feeding Skunk the helium. This was a team effort. All these shenanigans.
Yeah, no, I remember when they delivered the helium. Uh, Everybody tried some,
Yes.
and hear each other's voices on helium. It, it's fun.
Who delivered it? Did you? I saw somewhere that the ad agency, Donald, you guys told the ad agency rep to go get helium and a couple sombreros, and like you sent him this, you gave him this list of stuff to get. Is that what happened?
I don't know how that happened. Usually Donald would think of something, he would mention it to Walter, and then Walter would tell Gary, and Gary would get it done.
So all of a sudden, though, you have a helium tank and a sombrero, and then the okay. What were you all working on that day? Did you just like slip the jingle in between other sessions, or what? How did that play out?
Uh, I really don't remember. It was probably the only thing we did that day was to do the commercial.
Hmm. And then so my dad was taking photos because you're the one who ended up with the sombrero on and holding the helium tank in that famous Katie lied in the back on the back of Katie lied. You have there's a famous picture, Donald in his Christmas sweater, you with your helium tank and sombrero. Like, what kind of ridiculousness is that? Oh my gosh. Do you remember that moment taking that photo? Whose idea was that?
No, and I'm sure there's a lot more photos somewhere.
I found
Yeah.
them.
Well, if you found them, there's a lot of photos from that day.
Okay, I found a stash of 1970s photos because my dad had a camera a lot, right? Do you remember that at all?
Yeah, he had quite a setup. He had a camera on a small tripod, and a remote control that he could click it from across the room and take a picture.
That's cool. Yeah, he was a also a professional race photographer, car race photographer.
Yeah, I mean, he had the fancy flash and the motor drive that would advance the film.
The motor drive that would advance the film. I don't know if I know what that is. The motor.
Well, when you take a picture with an old style camera that has film in it,
Right, yeah.
then you have to turn the crank to move the film to the next picture.
Okay, so he that was motorized.
That was motorized.
Oh wow. Yeah, dad was on the bleeding edge of technology. Everything he had was like the best at that moment. So yeah, I actually just found, I've been posting some slides and I've been posting some vintage Steely Dan photos, and I actually found a bunch of negatives recently. So I'm gonna go get those. I'm gonna go get those scanned. But yeah, I've got some great photos, I think, of you, Denny. So I'll have to send them of you smoking. Sorry, wait. I should have. Sorry, I think
Cigarettes.
no cigarettes. I'm sorry. I don't know if I should have said that on live YouTube, but there's cigarettes in the photo. Sorry. I don't know what I got. You guys, did you go? Do you remember being on Hollywood Boulevard doing that photo shoot with them?
Uh, no, not really.
Okay, because I didn't see any photos of you in that, so I was wondering if you were there or not. They were shooting. They were trying to get a cover shot for "Can't Buy a Thrill," the first album. They went to Hollywood Boulevard in the morning, and
You know the story behind why they were doing
yeah, Ashley's asking. Oh.
what was the meaning behind
No,
that?
let's not ask. Let's not ask.
Okay.
Let's not ask. I think there's some things we shouldn't ask. There's some things we shouldn't ask. But yeah, Denny, I'm so excited. I found 1972 to 74 photos of you guys in the studio. So I'll have to share. I love that
Was
stuff.
anybody filming?
Was anybody filming? Did anybody else have a camera?
What, during the first album?
Yeah, the first few albums. Did anybody else have a camera around or
Film.
No.
no?
Oh my God.
Yeah, there's a look. I mean, I'm starting to realize that my dad might have some of the only photos of you guys in the studio during that era because it was a very
I mean, there was occasionally sometimes when, like the record company would want to get photographs,
mhm,
and they would hire like a professional photographer.
mhm.
Like that picture with the giant eagle. We're all sitting at the foot of this huge bird. Uh, that was taken at Ed Carif's house in Benedict Canyon. And he was a photographer.
Mm, that's cool. Yeah, but yeah, the intimate photos of you guys working on stuff, I'm realizing now are pretty rare, and I'm so happy my dad had a camera. Because you're one of the only bands that didn't really have lots of crew around you taking photos and documenting.
Well, nobody takes pictures of unknown bands.
Aww, my dad did though. Yes. Dad was a documentarian. Unknown, but wait, your first album was a hit. So by the first album,
Yeah,
was-
but before it was released, it wasn't a hit.
true. But then the second and third album, I mean, you guys just didn't have lots of film crew. You didn't have film crew. You didn't have people in there taking pictures and stuff.
Well, I remember there was some photographers at some live performances.
Mm-hmm.
They'd be walking around at the front of the stage and taking pictures.
Mm-hmm. Okay, Chad. Sorry to interlude with that photo.
No,
I don't know
not at all.
where we started going on a 1970s photo.
So let's stay on the 70s, Denny, and we have a couple more questions, and then I'm going to hand it back over to Simpsy to wrap up. But
Okay.
SV O'Rourke, who's with us today as well on the stream, wants to know if you remember playing any concerts with Linda Ronstadt around maybe 1973.
No,
No, you don't remember, or no, you weren't there.
I don't think we did. I think Jeff Baxter knew her from the Stone Ponies.
So maybe it was mistaken identity. Could have been Skunk. And then let's talk a bit about guitars. So Blues Sky, who's on the stream, asked, do you still have the Telly that we see you playing in the Midnight Special and other clips?
I do, but it's been modified. Actually, it was modified by Jeffrey Baxter. He used to work at Valley Arts and do work on guitars. And he said, let me fix it up for you. He changed the pickguard, so it now has a black pickguard, which you may have seen in other photos. He changed the lead pickup to a humbucker, so now it has two humbuckers instead of just one. The fingerboard is the same, but he did a fret job as well and changed the tuning heads and replaced the bridge. So, and he also added some coil faders, so there's a bunch of switches on it as well. I still have it. I haven't played it in many years.
Wow. So the coil faders were like coil taps to split the humbuckers down to the single coil?
Yeah.
Cool. I have a Telly you can see behind me. It's my baby. So fellow Telly guy. All right. I think the last thing that I'd like to ask from the questions that we've gotten, S. Flavius Mercurius, great screen name, is with us today, and said, does Denny play arch tops? Speaking of the D'Angelico, and also wants to know about your influences.
Well, that's two questions. I do have an arch top. I have a Gibson ES5. I at one time had a Barney Kessel and a before that, I had a different archtop Gibson. Before Steely Dan, I thought I would be a jazz guitar player. So my influences were like Wes Montgomery and what's his name, Jim Hall, and a few others. I prefer listening to horn players, though. In fact, at one point I thought maybe I should have been a horn player, but I never had the breath for it.
Yeah, I think we can all hear the influence of the horn players in some of your solos, right? You've got that bop aesthetic, if you will. So great. Well, thank you. That's I think all we had, Simsy, from the audience. I mean, we may have had a few more that I might have missed, and apologies if I missed anybody, but I think those were the big ones.
Oh, good. Yeah, I'm looking right now. I'm not chatting. I'm actually chatting on the YouTube right now because I'm afraid to mess with my computer at all. So I'm just checking our audience for Daryl. We have Daryl Broken Broad. Sorry if I'm mispronouncing your last name, but I see. Did the band ever film or videotape being in the studio in the 70s? We answered that. My dad was the photographer, and also, I mean, just for fun, I think he had it in the studio a couple days.
But we have yet to find film. Maybe we will.
We have yet to find film. I'm pretty sure my dad was just taking pictures, but and Daryl's also asking, do you know who are the musicians that were hired for the tour? But you guys were the musicians on the tour, so I'm not sure about that question.
Well, on the first tour, it was just us, but after that, we hired a few extra people. What Donald Fagen called the Steely Dan Reserve Flotilla.
Steely Dan Reserve Flotilla.
We had 2 girl singers and Royce Jones, who played congas and sang.
That's amazing. And Anton Jerome, okay, do you remember that? He would intro
Jerome?
Jerome, yes. Do you remember your introduction guy?
He was the truck driver.
That is one of my most favorite band intros of all time. Jerome introing you guys from the Santa Monica Civic Center.
Yeah, well, that was Walter's idea because we used to hang out with Jerome. He was a cool guy, And after we had him introduce the band one time, he went out and bought himself a new suit, and he did the introduction on a lot of gigs. And every time he did it, it took him a little bit longer.
If it's not good for you, I hope it's good to you. I know I'm misquoting him, Chad, but right? Isn't that Mr. Steely Dan or whatever? I mean, he was okay. So he was drunk and he was also driving the truck. That sounds
not at the same time.
Okay, not at the same time. I'm sorry. Did I get that was 50 years ago?
Getting everyone in trouble.
Getting everybody. Isn't there like some 50 years? That was 50 years ago.
No, he took his work very seriously.
Okay.
He was cold sober when he was driving.
Okay.
Okay, good. Thanks for clearing that up.
Okay, thanks for clearing that up. I love that intro. Oh God, I wish I could quote it now. Chad, do you remember? If it's not good for you,
verbatim. Yeah, I think you're on the right track.
It's gotta be good to you. Okay.
Were you gonna play beast mode or
yeah? So
he didn't know how to say Steely Dan. He thought it was Stevie Dan.
Stevie Dan or whatever. And he thought it was one guy, right?
Yeah, he thought Donald's name was Stevie.
Mr. Stevie Dan. Oh my God, Jerome. Is Jerome still with us? I have to look him up now. He's brought us so much joy. I
Yeah,
hope he
we had Michael
knows.
McDonald on that tour too.
Oh, do you remember meeting Michael McDonald? Do you remember meeting him?
But the first time,
Yeah.
Jeff Porcaro brought him to a rehearsal one day.
Oh, and that's how you met him. I heard he was just a kid. He was just a kid filling in. I got to get Bruce Robb on the show because he talks about the Michael McDonald early days. Was he playing piano first, or did he just come straight to sing vocals for you guys?
Well, he did both.
Mm-hmm.
You should
Yeah.
probably try to get McDonald on for an interview.
Yeah, I heard his daughters are actually spearheading some stuff for hit. Michael McDonald has a daughter. Christopher Cross has a daughter. There's apparently there's the daughters of yacht rock now that are spearheading all this fun stuff for their dads. And yeah, okay. What do you feel about that term yacht rock, Denny?
I've never heard it before.
Before today,
Just now, yeah.
you did not know that Steely Dan is literally the reason for a whole music movement called yacht rock. Yeah.
Said yacht like a boat.
Yeah, like a boat. Do you get it? I don't get it. Do you get it? Chad, can you
Yeah.
please explain to us what the heck yacht rock is? Denny, we're telling Denny for the first time that
Yeah.
Steely Dan is yacht rock.
Which is blowing my mind, by the way. But I've been told that it's music that people that own yachts would listen to on their yachts, right?
I don't have a yacht. Wait.
Well,
Okay.
I'll tell you, if only people on yachts listened to it, it would not be very successful.
It's a compliment.
That's true.
Yeah. Wait, say that again. I'm sorry. I was looking at the chat. If people that were on yachts.
If only people on yachts listened to it, it would not be very
Yeah.
successful.
True. Yeah. True. I mean, people in the chat saying yacht rock. The guy invented the term and it as a compliment. I love the term. I think it's great and it's fun and it's tongue in cheek. I know there's some Steely Dan purists who don't appreciate the term because it's basically created like a genre of.
It's better than butt rock. That's another
Oh my
genre.
God.
That's a genre. There's genres that are retrospectively like there's people today making playlists and then of course like Spotify and everything. They just name things.
I like to see my sister
So
talk
there
herself
they-
out of butt rock right now. Go
Yeah,
ahead.
early 2000s. I won't name any bands, but yacht rock is what you want to be. So I'm just saying, like, it's a compliment.
So what's the term before yacht rock then? Because yacht rock encapsulates soft rock or basically every band associated with Steely Dan is in this term, yacht rock. Somebody called one of my recent records yacht rock. Okay, so Toto, Michael McDonald, Steely Dan, Christopher Cross. Okay, it's supposed to be I have second arrangement in the chat saying yacht rock was supposed to be a Jimmy Buffett diss and it took on a life of its own. It wasn't supposed to be a yacht owner thing, right? It was supposed to be an offshoot of Marina rock, which was Jimmy Buffett's term.
Oh.
I mean, if you go back to the radio stations in the 70s, right, there were, all these different formats that had these fun acronyms like AOR for album oriented rock, MOR was middle of the road, right? So I feel like Steely Dan kind of slotted somewhere in between those two.
I thought AOR was adult oriented rock.
Oh, could be. Yeah, I could be wrong. Could be adult oriented rock too. Same difference, right? I mean, in terms of middle of the road, so not hard rock, but not really soft rock. Like I don't think Steely Dan was on that side of it. They were sort of right in that middle road.
But I don't think Steely Dan's like easy listening at all. So I don't know. There's some that I don't agree. I would take up an argument that they don't belong right now. Anyway, I think sometimes it's complicated listening, for sure. Active listening, Steely Dan. So, yeah.
Well, there's a number of Steely Dan songs that are studied in universities. They analyze the harmonies and pick it apart and dig deep.
Definitely.
It really is beautiful because you have this. I mean, yeah, there's so much to talk about there because you have the term yacht rock, which does incorporate some smooth, easy, like fun, like it's smooth listening and it's funky and it's this era. Uh, but then you have Steely Dan, where I mean, some of y'all songs are funky, but then you listen to your lyrics and you're like, wait a minute, what are they talking about? Like once you really start to dig in, like it's like peeling an onion. You're like, oh my god, look at this
Oh, yeah.
universe they're talking about. Like how
Yeah, what do you think of the lyrics, Denny, and how that's different than other bands?
Well, they were lit majors,
Mhm.
and they were widely read and knew a little bit about everything
Mhm.
except math.